Goosebumps, Bride of the Living Dummy, Chapter 14. I slapped the knees of my baggy polka dot costume and laughed. "You look awesome." Harrison growled at me. He scratched the ball of red hair on the top of his bald head. His face was white except for the big painted red mouth that swept from one big rubber ear to the other. His eyes were also ringed by huge red circles. I'll never forgive you for this, Jillian," he said. The blue ruffle around his neck bobbed up and down as we walked. "I just hope we don't run into any kids we know." We made our way up to Henley's gravel driveway, dragging our bag of tricks with us. I was the happy clown and Harrison was the sad clown. Mom and Dad had both worked for days on the costumes. Dad had wanted to build mechanical arms that would pop out from our sides. Mom convinced him we wouldn't be able to move at all with heavy machinery under our costumes. We stepped out onto the front stoop. My stomach began to flutter. I could hear kids shouting and laughing inside the house. I raised my finger to the doorbell. "Hope they like us," I murmured to Harrison. "If they don't, I'll give them a few shots with this," Harrison proclaimed. He pulled out the big air horn Dad had given him. The horn was loud enough to blast airplanes out of the sky. I don't know why Dad thought we needed it. I pushed the doorbell again. The kids were making such a racket inside, no one could hear the bell. "This will get them," Harrison declared. He pressed the trigger on the air horn. The burst of noise nearly blasted me off the stoop. The front door swung open. Mrs. Henley smiled out at us. "The clowns have arrived," she announced. She's a cheerful, round-faced woman. She had put her white blonde hair up on top of her head, but several strands were falling over her forehead. She wiped sweat off her chin. "4-year-olds," she said, sighing. "I hope you two can quieten them down. They're going nuts." Mrs. Henley led us into the living room. I saw several other parents huddled in a small den. Harrison and I stopped in the doorway and stared at about 20 little kids running around the room, jumping on the couch, bouncing off the walls, hitting each other with gift wrapping rolls, tossing stuffed toys at each other. Mrs. Henley cupped her hands around her mouth. "The clowns are here!" she shouted. "Everyone, sit down for the clown show." It took a long time, but we finally got them all sitting on the floor. A few of them were still hitting each other, and 2 boys were arm wrestling on the couch, but they were quiet enough for us to start our show. "I'm Zippy and he's Zappy," I announced. "We're going to make you laugh. First, we'll take a bow." Harrison and I took deep bows and cracked heads just as we'd practiced. I waited for the kids to laugh, but they didn't. Harrison and I cracked heads again just in case they missed it. This time, Harrison bowed too fast and we really cracked heads. The kids stared at us in silence. "When do we get cake?" a red-haired girl asked. "Shh! Watch the show," Mrs. Henley ordered. "It's my birthday. I want cake," the red-haired girl screamed. "Zappy and I are going to tell you some funny knock-knock jokes," I announced. "Knock, knock," I shouted, and I knocked on Harrison's white head. I thought the little kids would crack up when I knocked on his head, but they stared up at us in silence. "Knock, knock," I repeated, knocking on him again. "Who's there?" he asked. "Harry." "Harry who?" "Harry up and answer the door." Silence. A cold silence. Several kids began to whisper to each other. 2 girls near the couch started a shoving match. "They don't get the jokes," Harrison whispered. "They're too young," he pointed to the bag. "Start the tricks." "Okay, good idea." I pulled out the squirting cards. I knew this would make them laugh. Harrison and I had practiced our squirting card game, and each time we picked a card, we squirted each other in the face. "They're going to go nuts for this one," I whispered. "Let's play cards, Zappy," I announced loudly. "Do you kids like playing cards?" "No," the birthday girl answered. Several kids laughed. The first laughter we'd heard all afternoon. "Let me cut the deck," Harrison declared. He pulled out a huge butcher knife. "Put that knife away," Mrs. Henley shrieked. A little boy near the fireplace started to cry. "Sorry, just a joke." "Just a joke," Harrison gulped. He shoved the knife into the bag. "You're a bad card player, Zappy," I said, dealing him a card. "When it comes to cards, you're all wet." I squeezed the pump hidden in my costume pocket. The card didn't squirt. I squeezed it again. No water, nothing. "Well, here's a card for you," Harrison cried. He held the card toward my face. I could see him squeezing the hidden pump in his costume, but the card didn't squirt. Kids started to become restless. The two girls began chasing each other around the couch. Three boys started wrestling. Did you fill the cards with water? Harrison whispered. Me? You were supposed to fill them. No, you were, Jillian. Is it time for cake now? The birthday girl demanded. These clowns are dumb, the boy next to her griped. They stink, a boy grumbled, his head buried into his hands. Give them a chance, Mrs. Henley scolded. My stomach suddenly felt heavy as a rock. My knees were trembling. I knew I was sweating my makeup off. We were bombing. We hadn't made them laugh once. They hate us, I whispered to Harrison. He motioned wildly to the bag. Get the next trick. Hurry! I pulled out the whipped cream pie. My hands were shaking as I unwrapped it. It isn't time for birthday cake, I announced, but who would like to try some birthday pie? Yay! Several kids screamed. Several jumped up and down, raising their hands. This is yummy pie, I told them. What kind? A pouty-looking, dark-haired girl demanded. Is it apple? I hate apple. It's a whipped cream pie, I told her. I need 2 volunteers to try it. Who wants to try some birthday pie? I set the trick pie on the coffee table. Then I called a boy and a girl to the front. Harrison and I didn't plan to squirt the kids with the whipped cream. We planned to let them sniff the pie. Then Harrison and I would bend over the pie. Then Harrison and I would bend over the pie to sniff it, and we'd both get whipped cream in the face. We hadn't been able to practice this one because the whipped cream had to be added at the last minute, but we knew we had to get big laughs with this one. Go ahead, sniff the pie, I urged the boy and the girl. They were really cute. They didn't want to get too close. And are you going to push it in our faces, the little girl asked. Would that be an idea to do such a thing like that? I cried. Go ahead, just sniff it. Slowly they bent down to sniff the pie, and big wet globs of whipped cream shot up and splattered their faces. Oops! Oops! Harrison cried. All around the room, the kids gasped in surprise. A few started to laugh, but the boy and the girl let out deafening shrieks. My eyes! My eyes! It's burning my eyes! The boy wailed. He slapped frantically at his face, struggling to wipe the whipped cream away. It's burning me! The girl cried. She began to sob. Nigga, stop! It's burning my skin! Mrs. Henley hurried over. Several other parents came running out of the den. A lot of kids were crying. The boy and the girl were screaming at the top of their lungs. Mrs. Henley glared furiously at me. What have you done to them? She snapped. Must be something wrong with the trick, I explained lamely. She dragged the kids to the bathroom to wash their faces. The other parents struggled to calm down the crying kids. My heart was pounding. I felt sick. What went wrong? I asked Harrison. I stuck my finger into the whipped cream and took a tiny taste. Yuck! It's not whipped cream, huh? Harrison took a tiny taste. It's soap, he declared, making a face. Shaving cream or some kind of soap. No wonder it burned their eyes. I filled it before I left home, I stammered. I don't understand. I stopped. Suddenly I knew what had happened. The twins, Katie and Amanda, they had done it again. They made a switch while I was getting into my costume. I'll kill them, I shrieked. I felt Mrs. Henley's firm hand on my shoulder. She hurried Harrison and me to the door. You kids need to practice, she said angrily. I'm going to call your mother, Jillian. Huh? Call my mother? I cried. To explain to her why I can't pay you. You ruined Jocelyn's birthday party. You just ruined it. She practically shoved us out the door. Harrison and I stepped out under dark skies. Cold raindrops hit my face and shoulders. I knew the white clown makeup was running down my face, but I didn't care. I let out a sob. What am I going to do? I wailed. How can I explain to my mom what happened? I'm so embarrassed. Just tell her we stunk, Harrison moaned. We trudged sadly down to the street. Our sneakers crunched over the gravel drive. The wind changed direction, blowing the cold rain into our faces. Harrison turned to me. His eyes flashed excitedly inside the red makeup circles. Jillian, I have an idea. Let's bring Slappy to life.